Hey guys, Sean here. De-dollarization has been happening for the last few decades. Ever since 2001, the dollar has been gradually declining as a world reserve currency. Countries are choosing to diversify into other options like the euro and the Chinese yuan. And more importantly, central banks have been buying up gold like there's no tomorrow. But what about silver? During this period of currency wars, people tend to focus more on the yellow metal, and I don't think enough attention is being paid specifically to silver. Now today, I'm not going to be putting up fancy charts or making in-depth calculations like I usually do, but to have a discussion of why I think it's very possible there could be a sudden shift or rush to silver. And this time, I believe it'll be from three directions. Now firstly, it will be the everyday retail investor like you and me, renewable energy companies like Tesla, and the most interesting of all, central banks could get back into the silver game if the dollarization becomes severe enough. Now, a big caveat here. This is all speculation and might not really come true, so take this video with a pinch of salt. So firstly, we need to understand de-dollarization and its effects. We all have been hearing talks of a possible petro-ruble emerging or the Chinese yuan be considered by the Saudis as payment for oil. Now, all these are effects of de-dollarization. Essentially, countries like China and Russia are looking to depend less and less on the US dollar when it comes to buying and selling stuff, right? Specifically the building blocks of economies such as oil, metals, wheat, and other commodities. It's as simple as that, but the consequences can trigger a chain of events like what Credit Suisse analyst Zoltan Posa calls the rise of Bretton Woods tree. Now I'm going to cover this more in depth in another video, but this essentially means there will be a shift towards commodity-based currencies. The new world monetary order will be centered around currencies that are backed up by actual stuff we need to live. And we kind of know what has really triggered this flight from the dollar, right? It's firstly the mismanagement of the currency that has led to the high inflation rate of the US dollar, which is essentially draining away the purchasing power of every entity that's holding it. We are talking about central banks, companies that have to hold the dollar for their FX transactions, as well as every American and foreigner who are holding on to it in their savings accounts. Now, the big issue right now is that the US dollar traditionally used to be a store of value. At least it depreciated less than other currencies over time, right? Welcome to the wacky world of fiat currencies. I know it's crazy. So, companies and countries would use the US dollars they get from trade and buy US treasuries to earn some interest or yield from it. But what is the point when the dollar's inflation rate is almost 8% and the highest yield on treasuries is between 2 to 3%? You are still losing 5 to 6% purchasing power every single year. Not really ideal. Now, countries were alright with this losing situation because of the power of the petrodollar. Essentially, you need dollars if you want to buy commodities, especially oil. But right now, a lot of events are coming together that are turning this situation on its head. Saudi and China are discussing bypassing the dollar and using the yuan to buy oil. Russia is demanding rubles for their gas, and certain EU countries like Hungary are open to it. Now, this sets a very dangerous precedent where you no longer exclusively need the dollar to buy stuff. You can hold the yuan, the ruble, the euro, and still be able to buy the essential things that you need. So this is the first aspect that we really need to understand. Now, the second aspect is even more interesting or horrifying depending on your perspective, and that is the subject of counterparty risk. Now, the whole world has seen Russian assets, especially their US dollars, frozen as part of the sanctions. Now, this is the second nail in the coffin that's going to make resurrecting confidence in the dollar that much harder. The whole world at large is still holding a lot of dollars and treasuries, especially China, which holds over $1 trillion of US debt. Now, just imagine suddenly your assets held in the United States suddenly frozen, or you can't transact in the US dollar anymore. Suddenly, all your reserves become as useful as monopoly money. And this is why central banks such as Russia, China, and many others hold so much gold, right? They want something that holds its value and has zero counterparty risk if you hold it physically. And this is why they buy gold, right? It can't be debased and it can't be frozen. Now, I believe there will be a rush to gold first as part of this great diversification after the war concludes. Central banks, which are the biggest stackers in the world, will start buying gold once more again. And this is where silver comes into the conversation. The big issue with gold is that it does nothing, right? It doesn't pay a dividend and its users are rather limited. But silver, on the other hand, does a lot of things. Almost 70% of silver's users are industrial, and this really changes the whole situation. Remember when we said Putin was selling gas for rubles? Now this changes the entire conversation about energy security. Yes, short term the West has no choice but to source energy from the United States, Qatar and other Arab countries. They'll have to kickstart their nuclear power plant program again, but long term, this will only spur the move towards green energy like solar power. Now, I'm not delusional and believe that this will be accomplished within the next 2 or 3 years. It will take at least the next 5 to 10 years for anything meaningful to happen. But this suddenly places silver as a key strategic metal, something that's needed for renewable energy, right? And I won't be surprised if central banks one day decide to stockpile silver in addition to gold. Now, I still believe gold will be the main monetary metal because of its properties of everlasting purity without tarnishing and it holding a lot more value compared to silver. But I do see a scenario where silver is stocked for both its monetary value in a minor way as well as its industrial value. It's not really a stretch because governments once stockpiled silver in order to create silver coins, and silver is mined in many countries besides Peru and Mexico, and that means countries can easily buy up their own supply to store as well. All it takes is for one central bank to start accumulating silver in their reserves, and it will start raising eyebrows all over the world. There's only so much foreign exchange that the yuan or the ruble a country can diversify into. Those two countries aren't proven products yet, and the yuan is a controlled currency, and hoarding too much of it can be seen as taking sides against the US. Now, gold and silver are different. They are neutral assets, and this time silver will have that additional excuse of being a metal that countries will need to go green. So what about companies? Will Elon Musk and Tesla one day decide to stockpile silver? Will big tech manufacturers like Apple or Foxconn decide to start converting some of their cash into silver? Remember, silver is necessary to manufacture everything from solar panels to iPhones. Right now, Apple alone is sitting on a $200 billion mountain of cash and investments, and it is possible they might get into silver, right? Now, the tricky thing about de-dollarization is that it could accelerate domestic inflation in the United States. Basically, if other countries decide not to hoard as much US dollars as before, whether they sell it off for gold or other currencies, these US dollars will eventually find its way back home. And that means more dollars chasing more goods, causing everything, including the price of silver, to fly up. Now, knowing this, there is a possibility that companies like Apple and Tesla could start hoarding silver. After all, if the dollar is losing around 5 to 6% of real purchasing power a year, companies will have to pay more and more for the metal over time. So it does make sense for tech giants to simply hoard lots of silver as a literal hedge against the US dollar that they also have to eventually use to manufacture their products, right? So this is not a myth, and so far we have seen companies like Palantir buying physical gold to hedge against black swan events, and even AMC buying a literal gold mine, I'm not kidding you, to diversify their income streams. So companies are recognizing value in precious metals, and I think sooner or later, silver will be taken more seriously as the world continues to de-dollarize. But I think the biggest move into silver will come from retail investors such as me and you. Now, I don't know about you, but people around me are royally pissed that our purchasing power has been taken away and we have to pay more at the gas pump and the supermarket. So right now, there is a big scramble to go. We can see record sales from the US Mint and investors just piling into the metal. But I think it will come to a tipping point where it just becomes too expensive for the average person to afford gold. Now, right now, gold is sitting just below 1950, and if we take a look at the median household income in the United States, a developed country, it stands at around $67,000 before taxes. Now, this is at least for two people, and you gotta ask yourself, how feasible is it to buy an ounce of gold every single month? It's gonna be quite impossible because you gotta factor in your mortgage, your utility bill, gas and food prices, which are all rising. But silver is another conversation, and at $24, I think it is still rather undervalued. Now, it is still more than 50% cheaper than its all-time high back in 2011, And at around just $30 an ounce with premiums, I think it is still very affordable for the average family to buy. You can tuck away 10 or even 20 ounces a month without bleeding the bank dry or affecting your lifestyle. And it's specifically because of this that silver might play catch up to gold in the retail game down the road, right? The affordability factor is crucial here, and I'm seeing much more people taking prepping really seriously now, right? People are stockpiling food and water, and I think silver is really going to be on the shopping list very soon. De-dollarization is going to be inevitable, and I think we need to position ourselves before it's too late. And we can do it with either gold or silver. Right now, we are facing historic premiums of silver. We are talking about 20 to 25% easily for 1 ounce coins. And if you think it couldn't get worse, it definitely can. Now, the thing about premiums is that it is affected by both energy prices and demand. We already know that energy prices are trending up thanks to the conflict in Europe, but eventually people are going to rush into silver. Now, if that happens, all bets are off. The mint will jack up their premiums, and we have seen dealers also raise them before during the last silver squeezes, right? So I won't be surprised if premiums fly up above 30 or even 40% down the road if enough people pile into silver. Now, silver is a market that's around 9 or 10 times smaller than gold, and that means any moves up or down will be magnified. And there isn't many other avenues for people on the street to diversify into, right? The big hedge funds, the banks, and the billionaires, they can buy anything that they want. Real estate, farmland, you name it. But for the average Joe, silver will likely be the more affordable solution to get into, even at today's premiums, right? I think the sanctions on Russia by the US, they're going to backfire big time, right? You just can't freeze assets, block payments in US dollars, forcing Russia into a debt default, and think it won't have any lasting consequences, right? Right now, we are seeing all the action as spotlight being shone on gold, and the West desperately trying to block Russia from using their gold reserves to pay for their obligations. But sooner or later, I think attention is going to be paid more towards silver, right? So you need to be stacking some gold and silver to protect your purchasing power as the dollar slowly declines. And for the majority of us, silver might be the more affordable option. Right now, the US is threatening sanctions over China if they decide to come to the aid of Russia. China's economy is more complex, and the country is an even bigger military giant than Russia. And if we recall, China has a ton of US treasuries and dollars, which could essentially evaporate if the sanction switch is flipped. Now, China has long been encouraging their citizens to buy gold and silver as a way to save and invest, and this should really sound the alarm bells for us, because if sanctions really hit China, we could see a lot of attention flowing back into silver. Next to Mexico and Peru, China is the third biggest producer of silver, mining over 3,400 tons or 100 million ounces of silver in 2020. Now, if all this supply is either blocked from the world or the local Chinese decides to buy them up as a store of value, how do you think the price of silver will react? So if you're still deciding between gold and silver, check out this video that I made to help you choose better. Now, everyone is different, and you really want to make the right choice. Anyways, let me know what you think about silver and how you'll play out as the US dollar loses its place as the world reserve currency. Do you think demand will explode as people like you and me start piling into the metal? Or will central banks make a historic decision to start stockpiling silver again? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, stay safe, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for more gold and silver videos. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you soon.